a high nose attitude, which is normal during takeoff. But the sensors seem to have misinterpreted the information and thought the aircraft was going to go into a stall. Now this system forces the plane to pitch down. This can be counteracted by a pilot's inputs in pitching back up or electrically overriding the autopilot pitch down trim to pitch up, and both accidents had the pilots doing this. However, once they let go of the system now once again begins to pitch down, and the pilot is busy fighting to get control of the aircraft. And eventually, you lose authority of your elevator, and basically the plane will fly into the ground.
Make impact with
Yes.
either the ground or the ocean. Captain Weiss, to you in DC, that was a very clear explanation of the MCAS. But in fact, even before that, can you run us through what led to the need for MCAS? Because as I understand it, the Boeing 737, which has been flying for decades, did not have this system.
That's correct. The 737 has been a platform that Boeing brought out in the late 60s, and it's been a very successful aircraft and a very safe airplane for most of those years. This aircraft, this modification, has a different engine on it. It's a bigger engine, it's wider, and it's brought a little further forward on the wing. And because of that, the flight characteristics of that aircraft have now changed. The engine is further forward, and when power is applied, the aircraft pitches up. And thus, the Boeing engineers decided that they wanted to put this MCAS system on the aircraft to counteract the aerodynamic forces of the new placement of the engines.
Right. In fact, Desmond, let me go to you in Johannesburg. Again, the question, now that we realize why the MCAS was needed, what should have happened after the crash of the Lion Air Flight 610 to avoid ET 302 from happening, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, first of all, the FAA has to answer some questions here. There's not been a director since January last year. There's an acting director. President Trump has failed to install a full-time director, and the acting director is an ex-lobbyist for the airline industry in the US. So let's start there. The pilot training is a major problem here, and also the conversion. This MAX had a very simplified conversion. Literally, pilots were converting using an iPad and weren't even required to know about the MCAS itself, and that's one of the major issues here. Boeing has made a name for itself for not being entirely fly-by-wire, which means at some point the computers are off and the pilot's the pilot. But in this system, the pilots were not aware to the extent at which the MCAS was actually flying the plane. I think fundamentally that is a major problem. After the first crash, it's very difficult to take a plane like a Boeing out of the sky. I mean, you're dealing with a plane that is very, very safe and has got an amazing record. Also, you're dealing in the situation with, in the last year, in 2017, no major commercial airline crashes. So, you know, you must accept that at first it looked like an anomaly. However, I must say to you that the lack of action by the FAA and also Boeing itself, there are many questions to answer here, and I'm not the only one saying that. The Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and Reuters have all picked up on some serious misgivings about the process that the MAX 8 was introduced.
And absolutely, I want to go to the FAA, its role, and also the role of training in just 1 second. But Chris, let me come to you for a second. As an aviation industry expert, can you walk us through what was happening in the industry while Boeing was trying to push out its 737 MAX 8 model? Was there a rush to do this, and why?
Well, I'd like to say first is that Boeing is an amazing aviation company, and they have produced some really, superb aircrafts over the years. And it is really sad, and we really feel sad. The whole world feels sad, and we send our sincere condolences to the families. We will continue to do this. And the message even coming out from the CEO and chairman of Boeing, Dennis Muilenburg, also in his statement, is again, it's with a very heavy heart. And really Boeing, core of its strategy, core of the entire infrastructure and build is on safety. And definitely the whole process here, I would like to to be careful on exactly what we comment, because the aircraft has always had, since 1957 going forward, has had a safe record. And 737 MAX 8 here in this particular case is competing also with its major competitor, which is the Airbus model. So I think there's a lot of investigations ongoing. There is a need for us to let the investigations complete before we make full comments whether they rushed out the production. The important thing right here now is for us to tell the passengers that the aircraft on the ground, it's safe to fly. We have over 4 billion passengers flying annually across the world. So it is important for us that Boeing, Airbus, all the manufacturers, in fact even China now manufacturing, Comac is manufacturing aircrafts, is that safety remains very important.
Are you saying it's safe to fly the MAX 8?
No, I said it's safe.
Generally.
It's generally safe to fly.
Wanted to clarify
let's wait for the investigation
I wanted
complete.
to definitely clarify on that point. Indeed, Boeing is the world's largest aerospace company, and it's a leading commercial aircraft maker. From a business perspective, I can understand the need to compete, but the aviation industry is a very heavily regulated one, and necessarily so. So, Captain Weiss, to you in DC, did the regulators, specifically the U.S. Federal Aviation Authority, did they do their jobs here, and especially in terms of the certification process for the MAX 8?
So let me say this about the certification process. At least here in the United States, certainly in Europe as well, the certification process through EASA, the FAA, has been one that has been outstanding over the years. It's been very robust. It's been proven pretty effective. If you take a look at the safety record here in the United States and certainly around the globe, it's only gotten better over the years, certainly regions dependent. I think what you've seen is that to some degree, airlines, or at least in this country, the FAA may have given a company like Boeing a little bit more leeway in developing the product, developing the specifications, working with the FAA, but the FAA relying more heavily on Boeing and their engineers, their expertise, and their staff to kind of back up and in some cases take the lead in the certification process of the aircraft. You know, for good or for bad, you know, the way we make progress in the aviation industry, you don't know when you have a problem oftentimes until you have a problem. It's been so safe that I think we tend to take it for granted. Now, hopefully, what these two accidents will prove is that certification processes and the way accidents would be investigated may change. And the coziness between regulators and manufacturers will have more scrutiny.
And indeed, what is the role, I want to ask you, Chris, of the other aviation authorities, the other national aviation authorities? Certainly there is the Ethiopian Civil Aviation Authority. In Kenya here, we have the KCAA, the Kenyan Civil Aviation Authority. And what about international aviation regulators? What should they be doing to ensure that what happened with ET302 would not happen again?
Well, thanks, Fei-Fei. And I think what Captain Malu and Captain Weiss and my friend Desmond in South Africa have mentioned, it is critical also that the authorities are fully involved with the investigation, they're all collaborating so that they're able to find the correction and the solution to the MAX 8. But really here, we need to understand fundamentally that every authority is interested in the safety, and this is a highly regulated industry, in the passenger. So the custom experience teams, the airlines are all working in partnerships. Remember, the aircraft, besides the regulatory authorities, are built of millions of components. Some of the big components are from General Electric, from some of the major world-leading aviation components manufacturers. So all these big, large companies are working together in partnership to ensure the passenger is safe and the aircrafts are safe. So the authorities are going to take a lot of time, and already Boeing's statement says that there will be a software update. And they also said that there will be retraining for the pilots. So a lot of training has to be redone. There has to be a lot of testimonials that the pilots are happy and the airlines are happier, and all the regulatory authorities have tested and given their commitments the aircraft is safe after they find out what went wrong.
Thank you. On that note, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion about what went wrong with Boeing's 737 MAX 8. Stay tuned.
China Global Television Network. From broadcast centers in Beijing, Washington and Nairobi. A unique global perspective. 6 channels and a video content service. News when you want it and where you want it. On TV screens, websites, mobile platforms and social media. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to Talk Africa. We continue our discussion about what went wrong with Boeing's 737 MAX 8 with our panel of experts, Captain Mark Wise in Washington, D.C., Desmond Latham in Johannesburg, and with me in the studio, Chris Diaz and Captain Frederick Malu. Now, before the break, gentlemen, we talked about the possible design issues and also issues relating to the certification of the MAX 8. Now, let's talk about another critical issue that was discussed earlier, in fact, by Desmond, and that is the issue of training. Based on available information, it seems that both crews battled with the MCAS, as you've mentioned, but could not override it by themselves. What, at this stage of technological advancements and innovations, do pilots need to do before they go into one of these highly technical and advanced aircrafts?
Okay, first and foremost, training is a must. And the training, I must say, Boeing does it to a high standard. I had the opportunity to fly the classic 737-300. After that, we were moved on to the NG, the new generation. That's the 700 and the 800. And in our experience, all we did was differences course. And thereafter, you do training online. Now, from what is coming out, even the Ethiopian Airlines did the same. You do a differences class and you do some training on the aircraft. Now, Boeing has a MAX simulator. The Ethiopian Airlines had the 737 MAX simulator also. However, the MCAS issue cannot be simulated on that simulator. It's waiting for an upgrade. What's coming out is that the Ethiopian pilots were scheduled to commence their training on this issue in May. So they hadn't yet done this training. However, like I pointed out earlier, Boeing had issued a bulletin, and in the bulletin, Boeing advised about the MCAS system and how to override it. So in their defense, Boeing actually gave a procedure to be followed. Did the Ethiopian Airlines pilots follow this? We don't know, because we don't have that information yet.
Chris, let me come to you as a representative of the airline industry. Is it feasible? Is it the airline's responsibility to make sure that the pilots get adequate training, or is there some responsibility from the regulators and manufacturers as well?
Well, this is a highly regulated industry, I repeat again, and it is the airline's responsibility, the manufacturer's responsibility, all the partners' responsibility, and the authorities to ensure that pilots are trained regularly, they are checked regularly. And I think it is important that we are learning from this is coming out that training has to be more robust and training has to be done, because aircrafts are getting more sophisticated. Innovation is changing the airline game every day. So training will continuously be a focus. And I agree with my colleagues here that training must be insisted to be done more regularly, more bulletins, more updates, so that the pilots are refreshed over and over again. They are human beings and they need to be given more support and more focus, again from the manufacturer and from the airlines.
Desmond, let me come to you. You spoke so passionately earlier about the need for more training. It's come to light recently that the Lion Air MAX 8 that crashed on October 29th experienced similar problems just the day before on the previous flight. But because an off-duty pilot correctly diagnosed the problem and he helped the crew, the captain and his co-pilot, to correct the issue, that particular flight was saved. For you, Desmond, what is the key takeaway from that?
Well, that's just an incredible story, isn't it? I mean, that's not really confirmed by full reports, but we understand that's what happened, and I tend to believe that. I mean, there's a number of things here. One is that you've got to look at those two flights and see other things too. I'm not finger pointing at Boeing necessarily. In a way, we all are saying, look, there's an issue with MCAS and the training. But we also have to say the airline industry has a major threat, because they have a very, very skilled pilots and not so skilled first officers sitting in the cockpits of these airliners at the moment. So, for example, I think it was Captain Getachew, his name, from Ethiopia. He had 8,000 hours and something like 3,000 on type, 737. If I'm wrong slightly, I apologize, but it's in that area. And his first officer had a few hundred hours. Now, when you're problem solving in a crisis, even with clear air, as it was in that accident, you need both pilots to kind of lock into the experience level. So we have to say that there has to be a question asked of the present situation, and it's around the world this is happening, where you have highly experienced captains with 4 bars, and you have first officers who are less experienced but a lot less experienced. And I feel that this is one of the challenges that we've seen come out in these 2 accidents, for example. The other thing that has to be said is that the airliners were offered a redundancy system on the sensors that we believe were at fault. And the 2 airlines involved did not buy the redundancy systems. In other words, there was another sensor that could have been purchased at a much greater price to build into these 737 MAXs, but because of price, we're not installed in the planes. Thirdly, when Boeing did the test, they didn't call it a catastrophic failure if these sensors failed. So those are 3 ultimate things that I think impacted that decision, along with the training. So you can see this is a very complex issue we're talking about here. But as with all accidents in planes, 3 or more confluences or problems coming together in a crisis situation, and it's not a good situation to be in.
Captain Weiss, in Washington, D.C., I do want to get your input on that. Obviously, the aviation industry has grown very quickly over the years, and I know you're an expert in that field. Has this high speed of growth caused issues related to safety?
Well, let's go back for just a second and say that accidents don't generally happen from a single cause. It's a chain of events that lead to the catastrophe at the end. Whether it's lack of experience in the cockpit, and certainly with the explosive growth of aviation globally, that's an issue. You know, the Europeans and other countries have come up with they call multi-crew pilot license, which allows people to sit in the right seat of an aircraft with far less experience than had been previously done before. And certainly, you know, when you have a situation in an accident or an incident on board an aircraft, you rely on your experience. And as a captain, you rely on your first officer to bring that experience into the cockpit. And as a first officer, you want to be able to offer that as part of the team in that airplane. Training is critical. It's a major focus. It's got to be even more substantial in certain cases, as we've seen here. I mean, when you can just put something out on an iPad or a bulletin and not follow it through with more substantial training, that can lead to a situation. This wasn't a case of just a system modification. This was really a profile of an airplane that flew differently, that would react differently under certain circumstances, and there seemed to be a lack of detailed training that went behind this.
Chris, Boeing is no ordinary company, is it? It is the largest in the aerospace sector. It is the largest of the American manufacturing exporters. It's also a top defense contractor. Will Boeing be able to come back from this? And how is it going to restore consumer confidence?
That's a very good question. So I think Boeing have again I say produce amazing aircraft. So has Airbus, so has Bombardier, so has Embraer. All the manufacturers, you know, automation, technology, changing the airline industry very quickly. Yeah. So for Boeing, they even today Garuda is put on hold. You know, eight orders or 8 737 MAX aircrafts. All the delays until a solution is found. There's a big loss of revenue. But Boeing will come back out. They have a tremendous research, infrastructure and technology experts, and they are known to produce great aircraft. So they will come back, they will reinforce confidence, and they will ask the pilots, they'll ask the passengers, they'll ask the media, they'll take them out on the aircraft when the full solution is in place, and they will come back. And I'm sure that Boeing, being only two big aircraft manufacturers, the number of aircrafts are needed. You rightly said, you know, between the last 10 years, we've moved from 2 billion passengers per annum globally to 4 billion passengers per annum now, and it's growing at 7% every year. So great aircrafts, good aircrafts are needed, and people need to travel.
Well, we hope the pilot training programs keep up with that demand. Desmond, to you, what do you think? If Boeing came and invited you to go on its revamped MAX 8, will you be able to go, and will you be able to restore your confidence in Boeing?
I flew a Boeing in the last week, of course. I mean, Boeing's 100 years old. It's one of the most remarkable technology companies the world's ever seen. So, of course, they're not just coming back, they're still here. I think that they will get over this mark, and as long as they crisis manage this properly. What concerned me at the start of this is that there was silence, and then there was an attempt to explain away, and now it looks like they're doing this properly. The CEO has said publicly, he's fallen on his sword. He's a new CEO, remember. He said, look, we have to deal with this. We are working with the FAA, we're working with world bodies. Yes, I think Boeing, it's still here, and it will come back stronger, and I feel Airbus, Boeing, and new competitors, you know, the aviation industry, as been said, is exploded, particularly in Africa and in Asia. It's an exciting industry, and Boeing's going to be central and crucial in the coming years.
We are absolutely out of time, but are the skies still friendly, or should we be concerned? Should we still take precautions? And what are those precautions looking like? Let's start with you, Captain Malu.
I would say the skies are very safe. Like has been said before, we are extremely regulated. An issue like this, when it comes up, the industry addresses it by going to the root cause and fixing the problem. Would I fly the 737 MAX after the software upgrade? Yes, I would, because then I would have confidence that the machine is operating correctly. So we should be in safe hands.
Captain Weiss in Washington, D.C., you have the last word.
Absolutely. I have no problem getting on an airplane today, and I would certainly get on a MAX airplane once they're recertified, and knowing that the crews are fully trained, and in the future knowing that these accidents have brought about changes in the industry will make a fairly safe industry, a very safe industry, even safer in the future.
And that's it for this edition of Talk Africa. A big thank you to all of our guests in Washington, D.C., Captain Mark Wise, Director of International Operations at Reagan Aerotech and former pilot with American Airlines. In Johannesburg, Desmond Latham, an aviation journalist. And here in the studio, Chris Diaz, former marketing director in Kenya Airline Industry, and he has also served in the marketing board of SkyTeam, which consists of 20 global airlines. And also a thank you to Captain Frederick Malu of Kenya Airways, who is also a certified aircraft accident investigator. Remember, you can be a part of this conversation online through our social media handles on Facebook and Twitter. You can also catch this and previous episodes of Talk Africa on our YouTube playlist and the CGTN Africa website. Do join us again next week for more of Talk Africa. I am Liu Feifei. From me and the team here in Nairobi, until next time, goodbye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The last hurdle in the race to qualify for the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations is underway across Africa. Berths to the expanded 24-nation tournament in Egypt will be filled by the close of football business on Sunday as teams scramble for the limited spaces available. Who will be left out of the tournament in Egypt and who will pull a last-minute surprise in the tournament? Matchpoint takes a closer look. Hello and welcome to your weekly